Okay folks, in this video I'll be taking you deep inside the mind of an atheist, and that atheist will of course be me. A lot of you outside of the US, specifically in Europe actually, may be thinking right now, you're an atheist, so what? What's the big deal? But in America, just simply coming out and saying you're an atheist is a very big deal indeed, and can have some serious repercussions. But in this video, I'll be going into a multitude of subjects. I'll be going into my personal journey to atheism from Christianity, and I'll be going into who atheists tend to be, for those of you who are wondering about that. I'll be going into various misconceptions about atheists and atheism. I'll be going into some philosophical issues that pertain to atheism. And I'll also be making some social and political statements that also pertain to atheism. So buckle up your seatbelts, folks. It's going to be a long ride. Okay, well, let's see here. Yeah, atheists comprise about 10% of the population. Most atheists, though, aren't, so to speak, out of the closet, you could say. A lot of people don't know that they are indeed atheists. I mean, even don't even label themselves as atheists. But let's see here. Yeah, I'd like to give you my personal religious history. Yes. Well, I went to a couple of religious schools. I was brought up as a Christian, and I was brought up under a couple different sects actually, because my dad, he grew up in the Baptist sect, and my mom grew up in the Catholic sect. So I had both of their influences working upon my young mind. And in the end, I came out with a mixture of these sects. And in the end, when I really understood Christianity and would say I became a Christian, this is somewhere around age 5 or so, I'd say. I wouldn't say that I belonged to any particular sect. I would say I was just a Christian in general, which is actually quite common in the U.S., where you're a Christian, but you're not a Catholic or a Baptist or Protestant or whatever. I was in that group, and I had a lot of faith in my beliefs, and my convictions were just as strong as basically your strongest Bible thumpers. What prompted me to reconsider my beliefs and to change to atheism was the fact that I found that as I got older and I started to think about deeper issues in my life and question my philosophical and religious beliefs, I found that my religious beliefs and my belief in God could not stand up to critical analysis and logical reasoned thinking. It just couldn't. My religious beliefs, I found that the foundation of those beliefs, just like basically everybody else, the foundation of those beliefs was in fact faith. So I was put in a position where, basically I felt that I had to choose between either faith or reason. And in the end, I felt compelled to choose reason over faith. And I lost my faith because I logically just could not see how there could be a God. And I felt that my belief in God and religion was intellectually untenable. A lot of people can deal with that dichotomy and can accept that and can accept both reason that contradicts their faith, but yet still have faith. Well, I'm not that kind of person. So that's how I became an atheist, and this happened when I was around 20 or so. So this was like 5-6 years ago or so. And my story really parallels most atheists, it seems, where they were brought up in a religious household as well. But they, in the end, they ended up intellectually questioning what they had been brought up to believe, and they, in the end, decided not to believe for purely intellectual reasons. Okay. And also, another reason why I changed into being an atheist was the world was exactly as I would expect it to be if there was no God. You know, with all the death, all the innocent people dying, etc. You know, it's exactly what I'd expect if there was no God. Also, let me more strictly define atheism. A lot of people seem to get that confused. A lot of people seem to think atheism is when you state definitively that, oh, there is no God. That's not atheism. That can be atheism. Yes, somebody would say something and believe it would be qualified as an atheist, but that's not all. Atheism, you can be an atheist when you say, for example, now there might be a God, but I don't know and I don't believe in a God. This would be an atheist. In fact, though, I find that probably most of the atheists that I've seen and I run into, at least in America, do not accept the label atheist because there's so much negative stigma attached to the word. And most atheists here, at least, call themselves agnostics. Well, agnosticism, it pertains to knowledge and knowledge of God, but it doesn't have anything to do with belief. For example, yeah, I mean, if you're an agnostic, it simply means that, okay, I don't claim to know if there is a God or not, but it says nothing about belief. Personally, with most of the gods throughout human history, personally, I am both. I am an agnostic atheist, in that I don't claim knowledge of these gods. These gods could possibly theoretically exist. Yeah, Vishnu, Zeus, they could theoretically exist, I suppose. But I just don't believe in them. Except, though, with the main definition that we have, at least in America, of a God, and in general, you could say throughout the world, currently at least, where it's a being that is all-powerful, all-knowing, and perfectly moral. This is a being that I am a quote-unquote strong atheist about. I really don't believe, not only do I not believe that such a being does not exist, I believe that a being cannot exist. And I'll be going more into that a little bit later. Okay, also, I found when I switched over to atheism that a surprisingly small amount my life changed. I didn't all of a sudden become this immoral, antisocial guy. I found that, obviously you can have strong moral foundations without a belief in God and without religion. That's a fact. And I found that my moral and ethical choices on a day-to-day basis, me as a person, I mean, it really didn't change when I went from theism to atheism. It changed surprisingly little in my life, yes. Boy, the word atheism itself, just, wow, it's so negatively charged in our culture. And personally, as many other atheists have found, I tend I tend to not say the word in public, although I will freely admit to my non-belief in God. I usually call myself secular, free thinker, or non-religious. And I'll be going more into the stigma attached to the word atheism here in a moment. Okay, atheists, on the whole, I find, tend to be more intellectual and philosophical than the general public, and by a fair amount. And by the way, about 90% of top scientists are atheists. Recent study has shown that. Now, I'm not saying these things to be arrogant or anything like that. I hope you don't misunderstand me, but these things are just, what I've seen, and they're facts. But hopefully I didn't come off as arrogant there. We tend to be politically liberal, yes. That stereotype is pretty true, yeah. Or left-wing, as you might call it, in Europe. But shattering the stereotype, I mean, a lot of us get labeled as communists, and that's really not true. A very small percentage of atheists are communists. And I'll also go into that later. Okay. Most of us, as I said before, most of us atheists are in the closet, so to speak, or hiding our atheism for fear of social repercussions. However, contrary to what many say, most of us do get along quite well with believers, and most of the people that we've ever known throughout our lives are religious and believers. For example, nearly 100% of my closest friends, or all of my friends, throughout my entire lifespan, about 100% of them have been religious and believed in God. And I get along just fine with religious people in general. Only time I don't is when they don't get along with me, when they have a problem with my religious non-belief. Which I find is not that often, surprisingly. There's the stereotype that all atheists are always trying to convert people to atheism, and are incredibly anti-Christianity and such, and are always debating people and trying to convert. And that's not true for most atheists. It seems that most of us just don't do that. Personally, I used to be the debating type, and I used to try to convert people, but I found that it never seemed successful. No matter how reasoned or how strong I thought my arguments were intellectually, it never seemed to sway religious people. And as I thought about that more, it made a lot of sense. Because the fundamental basis of religion, think about it, is faith. And faith is not amenable to logic or reason. It's really not. And it's not about empirical evidence. If it was about those things, then it wouldn't be faith anymore. It really wouldn't be religion anymore. For those of you atheists who do convert people and make a strong effort for that, I commend you. I just lost my patience a long time ago with that sort of thing. Yes. Now I'm going to get into the the misconception that a lot of people have, and a lot of people seem to associate atheism with communism, and a lot of people claim that atheism was responsible for all the atrocities and deaths that were caused by communism, and this is utterly absurd. In fact, if you think about it, communism is directly akin to religion. Communism is just like religion without a God. Now, okay, for those of you, I'm strictly defining it. I'm defining it as say, the common sense of communism, the Russian, Chinese style of communism. Yeah, you can say that's directly akin to a religion. They have their sacred texts, their works, their sacred, men who said, famous things, and if you question these things, you can go out to the gulag or be executed. It's just like religious history. And also, if you're going to blame atheism for all the deaths that communism caused, well then, that's analogous to blaming belief in God, to blaming Nazism and all the atrocities that Hitler and the Germans committed in World War II on belief in God. Hitler believed in God, therefore, belief in God must have caused Nazism. And started World War II. Yeah, and it must have killed all those people. See, it's bullshit thinking, quite clearly. Okay, also, many associate atheism with immorality. And that's unique, that's interesting, because studies have shown that the population of people in jail, the population of atheists in jail, is far, far lower than it is in the general public. Far lower. In the general public, the percentage of atheists is about 10%. And I saw a study, I saw one particular study that said that less than 1% of atheists, of people in jail are atheists. And I've seen multiple studies say that it's not that low, but it's far lower than the general populace. And, you know, if that were true, if it were true that atheists are immoral people, then you'd expect the jails to be overrun with atheists. But that is quite clearly not the case. Also, you know, on the immorality thread, you don't need a God and you don't need religion to have a moral foundation. You really, really don't. And to have strong moral values at that. And you might ask, not me personally, I don't believe even in objective morals, i.e., I don't believe in an objective good or evil. I believe that it's simply just a human, you know, semantics issue. Even at that, you know, you might be asking right now, well, why don't you, you know, if you don't believe in objective morality, then why don't you go out and steal and kill and, you know, if you can do it and do bad stuff, I mean, why not go out and do that? Well, gosh, you know, the reason I don't do those things, well, let's see here. I wouldn't want other people doing those things to me, I just wouldn't want, I don't think the world would be a good place if everybody was doing that. Therefore, you know, I don't do that. And also, if I was going out killing and stealing and doing all these things, I mean, there would probably be some pretty serious repercussions. I mean, there would probably be a lot of bad things I'd have to deal with, like jail, maybe execution, and being persecuted by people. Not something I'd like to deal with. And, you know, I act in a moral sense because, or what I define as moral, at least. And what I define as moral, even though I am a moral subjectivist, what I define as moral is, you know, pretty much falls in line with what most everybody else defines as moral. Yeah, that's just who I am, you know, it's my tastes, my moral tastes, and I do feel strongly about them. And also, I found that most atheists seem to be more moral than most religious people. Okay, let's see here. And I find it interesting that that a lot of religious people state that they would not behave in a moral manner if it wasn't for the threat of eternal punishment and damnation. And I think that's kind of funny, that they don't act because they feel it's the right thing to do, but just because of the threat of personal consequences and punishment. You know, that doesn't seem right to me personally. No, it does not. Also, a lot of people here, at least in America, have associated atheism with Satanism, and this is also patently absurd. You know, sorry, but, you know, about 99.9% of us atheists don't believe in the devil or hell either, so that's really a non-issue. Okay, another misconception is that all atheists are the way that we are because of some traumatic event in our past, or because we are intellectually arrogant. That one really bothers me. But actually, most all atheists are atheists because of intellectual reasons. Yeah, you're going to have some atheists here and there who are that way just because, let's see here, they want to be rebellious, Or maybe something traumatic happened to them in the past, and they just unthinkingly reject God because of that, without really intellectually examining the issue. But that is overwhelmingly not the case. Yeah, kind of funny to hear religious people talk about arrogance. It seems like talking about God and these things, and like, yeah, I know God. I have the truth about God, and my religion is correct. That seems pretty arrogant to me personally. Okay, now moving out of the misconceptions realm and more into the philosophical realm. Let's see here. A lot of believers in God question us atheists and say, where did the universe come from? It's absurd for a universe just to pop out of nowhere or always exist for no reason. Well, I mean, think about it. Doesn't it seem more absurd for this being who seems to be of infinite complexity to all of a sudden appear from nowhere, or to, uncaused, or to always exist? That this seems pretty unlikely. And to exist outside of the universe. And what does it even mean for a being with intellect to exist outside of the universe and then to create it? Doesn't seem to make much sense to me personally. But yeah, so where did God come from? Yes, and it seems infinitely less likely that a God would always exist or just would spontaneously be created than if A, the universe always existed, or B, the universe spontaneously was created, not from a God, but spontaneously came about for just, say, natural reasons. As confusing as that can be, yes, they talk about that in cosmology. Alright. Also, theists say to us atheists a lot, well, how can you not believe? I mean, look at all the stories of miracles, look at the Jesus resurrection, event, etc., etc. How can you possibly not believe in the face of that kind of evidence? And the fact of the matter is that just about all of us atheists don't believe these stories with damn good reason. And that's because these stories have weak anecdotal evidence to support them. And if you're going to believe things like the Jesus resurrection, and things like things like him healing the blind and things like that, well, why don't you believe other religions' stories that also have weak anecdotal evidence? It's interesting that you accept the evidence in this one religion and not the other.